Yes!
I got a question for any and everybody watching this video. When was the last time you used a trace rifle? As a matter of fact, when was the last time you've seen anybody using a trace rifle? If you're over there scratching your head with confusion trying to figure out how to answer either one of these questions, don't worry, because I can't answer either one of them myself. But it's all good, because in this video, we'll discuss a few things about trace rifles alongside some ideas of what can be done to increase their relevancy and usage. So without further ado, let's get it in. As of today, in the 7th season of Destiny 2, we have 3 trace rifles in the game, and all of them are exotic. Cold, Prometheus Lens, and the timed PS4 exclusive Wave Splitter. We'll also be getting another trace rifle in Season 8, but as of presently, nobody knows anything about this weapon, so we'll cross that bridge when we get there. At 3 separate points in time, each one of these weapons were forces to be reckoned with, and did an amazing job of what they did. Back in vanilla Destiny 2, Cold was the go-to weapon to take Emperor Callus down within the Leviathan raid, and if you weren't around back then, I'll let you know that shotguns, sniper rifles, and fusion rifles were all in the heavy weapon slot. So being restricted to wielding 2 primary weapons forced the player base to get creative, which is how Cold ended up becoming the most optimal way to go against Callus, and it's all because of Cold longest winter perk, which grants it an increased crit damage the longer the beam remains on the target. It was also beneficial that Cold was easily accessible in the beginning of Destiny 2 due to being available as a pre-order incentive item. Not only was this weapon fun to use because of its capabilities, it was also enjoyable to use a new weapon type, because in Destiny 1, the only laser projectile-based weapons were fusion rifles. Cold was the only trace rifle in Destiny 2 until the Curse of Osiris DLC released. Curse of Osiris brought us a solar trace rifle known as the Prometheus Lens, which was in the most literal sense a broken weapon. Pre-patch, the Prometheus Lens was badly bugged and could kill Guardians in a Crucible faster than the blink of an eye. Bungie caught wind of this, and instead of emergency nerfing the weapon, they cleverly made Xur sell it, which gave the entire player base access to it. The same weekend that Xur sold his weapon, there wasn't a single person playing Trials of the Nine without the Prometheus Lens equipped. The era that the Prometheus Lens wreaked havoc in was referred to as laser tag, and this continued until the weapon was eventually patched and began to behave as intended. To this day, I honestly believe that Bungie did this on purpose to see how a fast time to kill would work in Destiny 2's PvP, since the community had been asking for the D1 style quick TTK to return. And based on how long it took for this to happen, it's safe to say that Bungie was doing everything in their power to prevent this from happening. Before Forsaken release, Destiny 2's Crucible was slow in every conceivable aspect, and it frustrated a lot of players. And despite how much I hated the laser tag era, it was honestly the most exhilarating experience I ever had in Year 1 D2's Crucible. I was completely thrown for a loop when I saw the speed that the bug Prometheus Lens was killing at. It made myself and other Destiny 1 veterans miss the fast kill times even more. The laser tag era will go down in Destiny 2's history as one of the worst and best metas to ever exist. And you would be a fool to deny the fact that it helped pave the way to the Crucible that we have as of presently, even though it still has a lot of improving to do. The third trace rifle to be introduced in a Destiny 2 is the Wave Splitter, which will be PS4 exclusive until September of 2019. Similarly, but not identically to the Prometheus Lens, this weapon was also incredibly powerful and consistent in the Crucible, but some time ago, its damage was brought down a bit. But even after the alleged nerf, the Wave Splitter is still very much powerful and viable in the Crucible. Now that we discussed the past relevancy and or accomplishments for the trace rifles, it's more than safe to say that none of these weapons are anybody's go-to weapon. Cold basically went extinct after the double primary weapon era came to an end. In the Forsaken DLC, Prometheus Lens was never heard from again after being patched, and Wave Splitter is seen here and there in PvP on the PS4 side, but it definitely isn't meta. So at this point in time, something has to be figured out in regards to bringing attention to trace rifles as a whole, and I have a few suggestions. First off, let's reiterate something previously mentioned in this video. Every trace rifle in Destiny 2 is exotic. Now, for purposes of uniqueness, this is pretty cool, but there are also a few discernible disadvantages to this as well. Everybody knows that when it comes to exotic gear, you can only equip one at a time. And this realization is even worse for trace rifles. Since trace rifles as a whole don't really have much of a place in the game, you can't pair them with any of your favorite exotic, kinetic, and heavy weapons to offset some of their weaknesses. And it's not only difficult to figure out the best times and activities to use them in, trace rifles only exist in the energy slot. So you're not only missing out on some of your favorite exotic, kinetic, and heavy weapons, you're missing out on powerful legendary weapon staples in the energy slot, such as Recluse, for example. We would probably see trace rifles used more often if the ones we currently have had their ammo type switch from special to primary. Due to the fact that trace rifles use the same ammo type as sniper rifles, shotguns, and fusion rifles, this means that trace rifles have a lot of competition. This approach would make the most sense because if you really think about it, trace rifles are literally laser projectile auto rifles. Back in vanilla D2, when infusion only worked for the weapons of the same slot and weapon type, Cold was the only trace rifle in the game at the time, so only auto rifles could be used as its infusion fodder. Some time ago, Bungie updated trace rifles to be compatible with auto rifle oriented perks on armor. So if you have perks in your armor like auto rifle dexterity, auto rifle loader, trace rifles would benefit from that. As stated previously, trace rifles only exist in the energy slot, and everyone knows that the energy slot is the most crowded slot in the game. If I'm not mistaken, there are more energy weapons in the game than kinetics and heavies, which makes trace rifles even less incentivized to use. If the Cold Heart, Prometheus Lance, and Wave Splitter would change the primary weapons and had their damage dialed down a bit, this might be a step in the right direction. Also, what if Bungie upped the ante even further and created legendary trace rifles? Not only would this bring more attention to trace rifles as a whole, it would probably mean that we could potentially see a trace rifle as a pinnacle weapon. And I could confidently confirm that if Bungie revealed that if one of the upcoming pinnacle weapons was a legendary trace rifle, it would surprise the entire fan base and potentially increase the popularity for the ones we currently have, especially considering the fact that 2 out of the 3 of them have catalysts. I would also like to see trace rifles in the heavy slot. I don't see this as too outlandish because it's been confirmed that we're getting an exotic hand cannon in year 3 that it takes special ammo as well as a bow in the heavy slot. Also, take a second to realize that linear fusion rifles, for the exception of Sleeper Simulant, don't exactly meet the power requirement to necessitate their presence in the heavy slot and would make a lot more sense if they existed as energy weapons. This is made more apparent when you realize that Opulence is a kinetic weapon that takes special ammo but shares the same archetype as the Crooked Fang, which is in the heavy slot. When you really think about this, you probably realize that the underwhelming nature and relevancy of trace rifles is completely inexcusable. Out of the 3 trace rifles, Prometheus Lens is in my opinion the best looking one and my personal favorite, but there will never be a point in time where I ever use it over some of my favorite weapons. Every weapon should have its own degree of viability, but I can't think of a single moment where a trace rifle would do something better than a shotgun or a sniper rifle. It makes matters worse that all 3 of the trace rifles we currently have are essentially the same weapon but with different stats and elemental burns. Cold Heart, Prometheus Lens, and Wave Splitter are all in the same archetype, sharing the same impact, rounds per minute, and aim assistance stats. Their exotic perks are different in the most bare minimal sense, but that still doesn't take away from the fact that none of these weapons have their own defining individual identities. I hope that in the future of Destiny 2, or the Destiny franchise as a whole, trace rifles develop more of an identity and become significantly more popular than what they currently are. Alright, that's pretty much it, everybody. In the comment section below, tell me how you feel about trace rifles and if any of the current ones in the game are a part of your everyday loadout. If you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor and thumb wrestle that like button. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.
I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.